On December 26, 1900, Captain Joseph Moore, aboard the relief vessel Hesperus, made his first entry into the ship's log. He was angry. The sea was rough, but his real anger was aimed at the shore. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse was dark. It was supposed to be the brightest light in the Hebrides, but for the past several hours, it had been a stone-dead tooth in the blackness. They were off schedule, delayed by a storm, but that was no excuse for the light to be out. As the Hesperus approached, Captain Moore blew the ship's horn. Once, twice. The sound echoed off the high cliffs. There was no answer. There was no flag on the pole. There was no sign of life. The lead relief keeper, Joseph Hurst, took a rowboat to the island. He landed at the small dock. The first thing he noticed was the silence. The seabirds were quiet. The landing platform was empty. He climbed the high, steep steps cut into the rock and reached the main door. It was unlocked. Hurst felt a cold dread begin to creep up his spine. The keepers never left the door unlocked. He opened the door. "Hello?" he called out. The lighthouse was silent. The first thing he saw was the clock on the kitchen wall. It was stopped. He walked into the main living quarters. The room was cold. The hearth was dead. On the table, a meal was set for 3, a half-eaten plate of salted mutton and potatoes, just sitting there, cold. In the corner, a single heavy wooden chair was knocked over, as if someone had stood up in a hurry. Hurst was a veteran keeper. He knew this was wrong. This was all wrong. He ran to the tower, calling their names: Ducat, Marshall, MacArthur. Silence. The tower itself was clean. The lamps were trimmed and filled with oil, ready to be lit, but unlit. On the desk, the lighthouse logbook was open. Hurst's eyes scanned the last few entries. He read the entry for December 12th. The handwriting belonged to Thomas Marshall. It spoke of a severe storm. "Winds I have never seen," it read. "James Ducat, the principal keeper, has been very quiet. Donald MacArthur, the tough one, is crying." Hurst paused. MacArthur, crying? He was the strongest man in the service. He read the next entry, December 13th. "Storm still raging. We are praying. We are trapped in the tower. The sea is a beast." He read the last entry, December 15th. "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." And that was it. The log stopped. Hurst ran back to the ship, his face pale. He told Captain Moore what he'd found. The logbook, the crying, the overturned chair, the uneaten meal, and the 3 men, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, were gone. The police investigated. They searched every inch of that desolate island. They found nothing. But they did find one other thing: the weather reports. The weather reports for the entire Scottish coast. On December 12th, 13th, and 14th, there was no storm. The sea had been perfectly, completely calm. Whatever those 3 men saw, whatever they heard, whatever made the toughest keeper in Scotland cry, it wasn't the wind and it wasn't the waves. They simply vanished, leaving only a cold plate of food, an overturned chair, and a logbook filled with lies. Some lighthouses are built to save sailors. The Tévennec light was built on a place the locals called Oncu's Rock, the Rock of Death. It was a jagged, cursed tooth of granite off the coast of Brittany, France. Before the light was even lit, The place was known for screams. Sailors claimed they heard the voices of the shipwrecked, crying out from the stone itself. The government had decided to build a lighthouse on it. The first keeper, Henry Tévennec, lasted less than a year. He was rescued raving, claiming the rock was alive and was screaming at him. The second keeper also went mad. The third died mysteriously. The fourth was Alain. Alain was a man of science, a veteran. He did not believe in ghosts. He did not believe in Ankou. He believed in the wind, the sea, and the solitude. When they told him the stories of the keepers before him, he just scoffed. They were weak, he wrote in his logbook. They were superstitious peasants. I am here to do a job. The first week was perfect. It was quiet. The only sound was the gentle wash of the waves. He kept the light burning. He read his books. He felt at peace. On the 8th night, the wind picked up, and Alain heard the sound for the first time. It was a low, hollow moaning. It seemed to come from beneath the lighthouse, from the foundations. It's just the wind, he wrote in his log. The wind howling in the rock fissures, nothing more. But the sound got louder. As the days went on, it wasn't just a moan. It was a word, a single repeated word carried on the wind. It sounded like, "Carry on, carry on." Alain knew the old Breton language. It meant, "Go away," he laughed. The wind was telling him to go away. He wrote it in his logbook as a joke. "The wind is quite rude tonight." The joke didn't last long. A true Breton storm rolled in. The waves were monsters, crashing over the tower itself. And the sound was no longer a joke. It wasn't one voice. It was hundreds of voices. They were all screaming at once, a chorus of agony, coming from under his feet. "Carry on, carry on." Alain barricaded the door. He put his hands over his ears, but the sound, it was in the stone. He could feel the vibration in his teeth. He was trapped in a resonance chamber of screams. And then the voices changed. They stopped screaming, "Carry on." They started screaming his name. "Alain, Alain, go away, Alain." He looked out the lantern room glass. In the spray of the waves, he saw them. Faces. Hundreds of pale, screaming faces. In the water. The faces of shipwrecked sailors. The faces of the keepers who came before him. When the relief boat arrived 3 weeks later, they found the lighthouse intact. They found Alain huddled in the corner of the lantern room. He was not insane. He was not raving. He was just quiet. He refused to speak. He simply packed his bag and pointed at the floor, at the stone floor of the lighthouse. His logbook was open. The final entry was written in a shaky hand. "I understand now," it read. "The first keeper, Tévennec. He wasn't mad, he just listened. The rocks are hollow. The sound, isn't the wind, it's them, it's all of them. The lighthouse, and isn't a warning, it's a plug, and they are trying to get out." Alain never set foot on a lighthouse again, and the Tévennec light was soon automated, because no human would ever stay there again. The year was 1801. The Smalls Lighthouse was not a tower on a cliff. It was a hell of wooden stilts, driven into a treacherous reef, 20 miles off the coast of Wales. It was a cage, surrounded by the angriest water in the world. And inside this cage were two men, Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith. They were not friends. The logbook showed they argued constantly. They were trapped together in a tiny room with only the scream of the wind and each other's hatred. In early winter, the tension broke. Griffith became ill. Some reports say it was a sudden agonizing sickness. Others say it was a freak accident on the slippery guano-covered rocks. The how didn't matter. The result did. Thomas Griffith died, and Thomas Howell was now trapped, 20 miles from shore, alone, with a corpse. Howell's mind raced. He couldn't just bury the body at sea. If he did, what would they say back on shore? They knew he hated Griffith. They would call it murder. He would hang. His paranoia was stronger than his grief. So he made a decision. He wouldn't bury the body. He would preserve it. He spent days building a makeshift coffin from old wooden planks. He dragged Griffith's body, cold and stiff, out onto the small wraparound lantern gallery. He sealed the coffin. And then, using all his strength, he lashed it to the outside railing. He left his former partner outside, exposed to the sea. He went back inside. He locked the door. He was safe from the accusations. He was alone. Or so he thought. The sea did not respect the dead. A storm hit. One of those legendary Welsh storms that lasted for weeks. The waves, they were monsters. They crashed over the top of the lighthouse. The wind, it shrieked, and it tore at the coffin. It ripped the cheap wooden planks apart, exposing the body inside. The ropes held. Howell was inside, trying to keep the light burning. And then he heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A knocking. At the window of the lantern room, Howell froze. Tap, tap, tap. It was rhythmic. He slowly looked up. Outside the glass, he saw it. The body of Thomas Griffith, its arm, freed from the broken coffin, was being lifted by the wind and dropped against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. It looked like Griffith was knocking, like he was asking to be let in. The storm raged for weeks, and for weeks Howell was trapped in that room with the constant tapping, tap, tap, tap. He tried to block it out. He sang. He shouted. He put furniture against the window, but he could always hear it. The relentless knocking of his dead companion. The sight of the rotting face staring at him through the glass. His mind, already strained, just snapped. When the relief boat finally arrived, the sea was calm. They found the remains of the coffin, still lashed to the railing. They broke down the door to the lantern room. They found Thomas Howell. He was crouched in the corner, his hair white, his eyes wide and vacant. He was humming to himself. He was completely, utterly insane. The keepers on the boat, they said he looked 100 years old. After that day, the British Lighthouse Service, they instituted a new rule, a rule that stands to this day. And there must never be only two keepers. On a station, there must always be three. Being a lighthouse keeper isn't what you think. It's not romantic. It's not an adventure. It's a job. A very, very lonely job. And at Heceta Head in Oregon, you're never truly alone. When I first took the post, the other keepers warned me that they didn't warn me about the storms or the machinery. They warned me about her. They called her Rue. I'm not a superstitious man. I just nodded, smiled, and got to work. The lighthouse itself, the tower, that was my domain. The keeper's house, the beautiful white house attached to it, that was hers. The first month, Nothing. Just the wind, just the fog rolling in off the Pacific. And the sound started. It always started from the attic, a soft scraping, like someone dragging a small piece of furniture across the floor. Scrape, scrape, and then footsteps. Light, quick footsteps. Walking down the attic stairs and stopping. Right outside my bedroom door. I'd open the door. Nothing. Just an empty, dark hallway. The first time it happened, I blamed the old house. The second time, I blamed the wind. The third time, I couldn't explain it. I went up to the attic. The door was locked. We always kept the attic door locked, but I could hear the scraping from inside it. I unlocked the door. It was cold, freezing cold. The attic was just dust and old furniture covered in white sheets. It was empty, but in the center of the room was a small wooden rocking chair. It was still moving, just rocking back and forth slowly in the cold, silent room. I closed the door. I locked it. I went back downstairs. She wasn't violent. She just made her presence known. You'd walk into the kitchen, and the smell of old dead roses would just fill the air and then vanish. You'd be cleaning the lantern room, and you'd feel a cold hand brushing against your arm. We had an understanding. The light was my job. The house was hers. But the worst part, the part that broke the other keepers, was the attic window. One night I was outside checking the fuel tank. It was 3 a.m. A clear moonlit night. I just happened to look up at the house, at the small circular window of the attic, and she was there. She was standing in the window, a tall, thin woman in a long gray dress, the gray lady. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking, past me out towards the cliffs, out towards the sea tree. She wasn't scary. She was just sad. Her face was pale, and she was rocking an invisible child in her arms. She was just standing there, rocking, and then she turned her head slowly, and she looked right at me. She didn't scream, she didn't move, she put a single pale finger to her lips in a shushing motion, as if I was the one making too much noise. I didn't run. I went back to the tower. I didn't sleep in the house that night. You learn to coexist. The old keepers say her name was Rue. They say her child fell from those cliffs many, many years ago. They never found the body. So she just waits. She waits. She cleans the attic. She rocks her baby, and she shushes anyone who interrupts her. When I took my post at the St. Augustine Lighthouse, they gave me the keys and the official heavy logbook. The supervisor, a weary man named Hedges, gave me a tour. He showed me the light, he showed me the fuel tanks, he showed me my small cot-sized bed in the keeper's house. "It's a lonely job," he said, "but the history is good company." He was right about the history, but he lied about the company. My first week was spent cleaning. The place was old. I was sweeping behind an ancient heavy desk in the sitting room when my broom hit something. It was wedged between the desk and the wall, a small leather-bound book. It wasn't an official log, it was a diary. It was water-damaged and the leather was stiff. The first page just said, "Elias Thorne, Keeper, 1902. I read it that night by the light of the lantern. Elias's first entries, normal. Weather clear, polish the lens. Supply ship arrived. Good tobacco. Sea is calm. But as I read deeper, the entries changed. The handwriting became frantic. I turned to an entry from August 4th, 1902. Elias wrote, "Cannot sleep. There is a sound. I thought it was the wind in the iron, but it is not. It is children. The sound of small feet running up and down the iron steps of the tower, all night." I felt a chill. I hadn't heard anything. I told myself Elias was just suffering from keeper's madness, the solitude. I kept reading. His next entry, August 7th. I heard them laughing. It's a game to them. They run up the steps and they stop. Right outside my door, I can hear them giggling, whispering. They are waiting for me to open it. I stopped reading. My own room was at the bottom of those same iron stairs. I looked at my door. It was closed. I told myself this was stupid. This was 100 years ago. It was just, a story. I kept reading. The entries got worse. He wrote about seeing shadows, little shadows, darting around the lantern room high above. He wrote about the smell of salt water appearing inside his locked room. And then the last entry, the handwriting was terrible. Just a frantic scrawl tearing the page. It said, "They are not ghosts. They are invitations. They are not haunting me. They are asking me to play. They are waiting. Down by the water, the cart is ready. They say, it's fun. They are laughing so hard. I have to make them stop laughing. I have to go play." That was the last entry. I closed the diary. My hands were shaking. I found out later, Keeper Elias Thorne, he vanished in 1902. They said he just walked into the sea. A tragic story. A man driven mad by loneliness. I put the diary away. I was unsettled, but I had a job to do. I got up and started my nightly check of the tower. I opened my door. The tower was dark. It was silent. Just the sound of the wind outside. I took one step onto the iron stairs, and then I heard it from far above me. In the darkness of the lantern room, a sound. The sound of children giggling, and the hollow metallic echo of small bare feet running down the stairs towards me.